Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I am your host, Marianne Petrie. Bradley's mother, Narcus Golan, passed away 3 months ago. He is autistic and needs structured routine and therapies he receives for his autism 6 days a week. However, Italy just entrusted Bradley to the Italian Social Services. If he is ruled to go back, he will face the next 3 to 4 years in the Italian foster care system, where he cannot speak or understand the language. He will be taken away from the only family he has ever known. Please call Governor Hochul at 518-474-8390. That's Governor Hochul of New York, 518-474-8390. Please voice your concerns to keep Bradley here in these United States. Hashtag keep Bradley safe. I have a return guest on. I have Karielee Barrere on. She was last on September 23rd, 2022, Season 3, Episode 113, where she and her reporter were on discussing her case. And she is on now with her attorney Gary Kreep. He's retired Superior Court Judge of San Diego, California, and one of the founders of the Constitutional Rights Foundation. And Karilee has some updates for us. And I welcome you back, Carrie. What's been going on and how did you find this wonderful attorney?
Well, I'm very grateful to him because he's one of the few attorneys in San Diego who recognized the injustice of what was happening here in the case. And just a reminder of what was going on is my ex-husband, Michael McEwen, filed documents that were not real, a post-marital agreement giving him everything, stating that I had been advised by an attorney when in fact that attorney had submitted a declaration stating that he never looked at any post-marital agreement giving Michael McEwen everything. So just to give you an indication of who Michael McEwen is, he is a forensic accountant. He works throughout San Diego, Irvine, Orange County, and Los Angeles. And he goes into courthouses throughout California as an expert witness in fraud. And he specializes in marital fraud. This is what he does for a living now. So he goes into these courthouses and these judges look to him as an expert. And so they think that they've got somebody telling them the truth, who's this upstanding, honest person. And I can't speak for Attorney Gary Kreep, but I can tell you, because he was a Superior Court judge, I think he would agree with me in that this is a system that is a family of judicial people who want to see this. I think the majority of people in this system want to see it run correctly and want to know that people are being honest and fair. I think that's what I'll let Gary talk about what he did as a judge or what he expected from people that came into his courtroom, and especially somebody who called themselves an expert witness. So when a judge is talking to somebody who's the expert, he's assuming that person is going to be telling the truth. Well, in my case, Mr. McEwen, it's well documented that there's been a lot of things that have been fraudulent. Now, like any abuser, they're going to turn it around and say the other person did it. The problem is only one person walked away with a windfall of money and left me penniless and my autistic son. So I slept in my car for the first year to try to recover from the loss, financial loss. So this has been an ongoing struggle for 5 years of trying to get the courts to look at the fake judgment that was submitted to them and recognize that it didn't happen. And I'm going to let Gary talk a little about the judgment and who he is and what he does so that you can kind of get an idea.
Okay, just one correction. The group that I co-founded is not the Constitutional Rights Foundation. That's a different group. They have a much different philosophical bent about the law. The group that I co-founded was California Constitutional Rights Foundation, which is a conservative Christian group. And the Constitutional Rights Foundation has gone to some great lengths to make sure that it's very hard to find us on the web, interestingly enough. Anyway, I was a judge. I've been either a judge or an attorney since 1975, which means for 47 plus years. And before I became a judge, I was head of another conservative constitutional law group, the United States Justice Foundation, which is still going on, headed by James Lacy out of Orange County. As a judge, I didn't make a lot of friends while I was on the bench because I wanted to get the work done. When I first got on the bench, and in my second year as being a judge, I was handling what are called limited civil cases, which are under $25,000 of judgments, and eviction cases, or what we call unlawful detainers. And one of the clerks came to me and said, "Your Honor, we have 5,000 judgments that have not been approved by the court because the judges who issued them originally don't want to be bothered in signing off on the judgment." So she asked if I would handle them. I said, of course. So with help from two other judges who each took, I think, a box or two each, we got through, I don't know how many boxes, I'd say probably 5,000, probably 400 boxes. We got through 5,000 judgments in about 6 months, got them all up to speed. Now that, you have to understand, that isn't just putting pen to something, signing it. You have to go through each judgment, make sure that the I's are dotted, the T's are crossed, and everything's been done right. So I did that in the first 6 months of my second year on the bench. And the funny thing, I was told by clerks and judges that when I was off on vacation or whatever, I had 2 surgeries when I was on the bench. It took 3 or 4 judges to cover my calendar, because one judge to handle what was going on in the courtroom, and 2 to 3 other judges in the back room, going through and making sure the paperwork was done all right. And in fact, when I first got on the bench, and first turned over to asked to handle the eviction calendar, they had 4 judges working on it. By my fifth year on the bench, I was handling all evictions for the entire county, taking over where 4 judges had been, or commissioners had been handling it. It's not to say I'm wonderful or whatever. I'm just a fast worker, and I take my job seriously.
Yes.
But getting to this case, we're trying to right a wrong. I mean, I never met Ms. Barrere before she came to my office, and to be quite honest, without waiving attorney-client privilege, when she first told me her story, I thought it was pretty far-fetched. But as I've gotten into the case, I have confirmed not all, but many of her allegations, as have some court officials. There was a phony wage assignment that was allegedly stamp signed by a clerk when a judge had to stamp sign it. It'd be a judge's stamp, not a clerk's stamp. Issued months after it was supposedly issued, in which money was taken out of Mr. Barrere's salary, and then Mr. McEwen's salary, I apologize, and sent to a P.O. box that only he had access to. Now, he denies that. He said he never saw the checks. He knows nothing about it, and that Mr. McEwen actually took the checks. But we know that that's not the case, that the checks were going to him. We've subpoenaed the records from the San Diego Police Department to see about obtaining the backs of those checks to see who signed them. We have not received those documents yet, but we're hopeful that they will be coming in. We know that the San Diego the district attorney's office is not very favorable towards Ms. McEwen. They were contacted by at least one, possibly as many as 3 judicial officers, and asked to investigate some of the things going on in this dissolution, including the fraudulent judgment that was supposedly entered in December 30th, 2016. And they issued a voluminous report with almost all of it redacted, basically said they didn't find enough evidence to move forward on it. We know they didn't contact a number of witnesses to the matter. For instance, one attorney has testified that according to the judgment, he counseled Miss Barrere in before she signed the document. He has stated under penalty of perjury he did not. The judgment says that another attorney was present at a hearing where this judgment was entered, and she's testified that she was not. Both of these attorneys, the first attorney never even met Ms. Barrere until this all started coming down. That attorney, interestingly enough, was a personal friend of the judge who allegedly signed the judgment, and has testified that he would never appear before Judge Washington because they're personal friends, and he cannot appear before that because that would be a conflict of interest. Mm-hmm. Then there's the issue of a judgment or an order issued by a judge who purportedly in favor of Mr. McEwen, who purportedly is a personal friend of Mr. McEwen and had personal relationships going back years. And if that is the case, then that is improper. It should never have happened. So there's a lot of things that need to be investigated. The district attorney's office, who I had experience with several times when I was on the bench, I made referrals to the district attorney's office to investigate individuals who were practicing law without a license, and they just blew the court off and said, no, we're not going to do it, which they're supposed to do. Somebody's supposed to do, although you have these people falsely claiming to be attorneys, being paid thousands of dollars, and this attorney doesn't want to do anything about it. I can't speak for them. They've got their own issues. Mm-hmm. That's wrong. And if the district attorney is not going to protect who is paying for commercials to tell people that they're protecting them, won't even go out and investigate a court referral on 2 different times, I don't know who. I guess we have to turn to the Attorney General to come in and start investigate some of these issues. And I think that'll ultimately happen in this case.
And if I might add, Michael McEwen worked for the DA's office. We probably need to make that very clear. He did work for them as a San Diego detective in financial crimes. So he has done quite a few cases. In fact, in his own deposition recently, he said he's done more than 100 different depositions in court and has been a witness. So he has worked a long time for the DA's office and worked on some very important cases. Mm-hmm. And a lot of the people are kind of explaining to me that there's a possibility that the DA might not want to investigate it because they would have to reopen his cases, because that would be, if this comes out, what he has done, mm-hmm. it could cost a whirlwind of problems for the San Diego DA's office. Now, I'm not saying that that's definitely it, but that is a possibility.
Let me explain that. It's not that the DA's office would have to reopen cases. If it was found, and I say if, because I'm not saying that, making any allegations, but if it was found that one of their experts, such as Mr. McEwen, had falsified evidence in any case, that could lead to defense attorneys in any case in which he'd been involved moving to reopen the case on the grounds of potential fraud. Again, I don't know. I'm not saying Mr. McEwen has committed any fraud, but that's what happened. We've had that happen when individuals in crime labs have falsified their credentials, mm-hmm. or falsified evidence, and then every case that they've been involved in, to one extent or another, winds up being re-examined. And it can cause a big headache for a district attorney's office. Mm-hmm. So I'm not saying that's why they redacted, 75, 80, 90% of their report. But there may be a concern on their part along those lines. I don't know. I'm not inside the DA's office. I can't speculate on what their concern is, may or may not be.
When did they redact some of these things?
It was actually showed up on a judge's desk mysteriously. Unbeknownst to me, Mr. McEwen said to a judge, "Your Honor, there's a package sitting up there for you." And she was kind of confused and looked around, and he said, it's there, it's in a vanilla envelope. And so she opened it up, and lo and behold, it was the redacted version of what the DA's office had investigated. So Mr. McEwen was fully aware that that was there at the judge's desk. I just didn't know about it. But the judge that saw it was kind enough to make a copy of it for me because I had a right to it. Mm-hmm. And she let me have that copy. Otherwise, I would not ever have known that that even existed. So.
Now, I will say that's unusual. Usually, if a DA is going to contact a judge and provide them with a report, it would come in a DA's envelope. There'd be a messenger slip or some way to identify it. My understanding is that there was nothing identifying on the envelope about what was in it. Just wound up on her desk. So that raises suspicions on my part about how it got there, especially since Mr. McEwen knew it was there when it was delivered. Now, I do know that he did subpoena a deputy DA investigator to testify in this case, but then canceled that deposition at the last moment. So I'm not sure if maybe the DA's office is concerned about what having one of their investigators testify about that packet or about anything having to do with this case.
Yeah,
and I'm not wanting to throw any judges under the bus or anything by all means. However, we have a commissioner who years ago indicated that the possibility she believed Mr. McEwen was guilty. And this was
well, just a second. She believed that there.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
She didn't say that he was guilty of anything. She said that there were a number of documents, one being the wage assignment order I talked about previously, and one and this fraudulent judgment that needed to be investigated and looked into. And I think I forget exactly what she said. I believe she said in the report, and that can be provided to you because it's public documents in the court file, that there was something wrong with both of those documents, and she made a referral, which ultimately obviously fell on deaf ears at the district attorney's office. I've known this. I've known this. She's retired now. We attempted to subpoena her to testify, but the court blocked her from being able to testify, as they have blocked the judge who inadvertently signed the fraudulent judgment. He's been blocked from testifying. That's the court's action. We have no way, unless we spend a whole lot more money than she's already spent. She can't afford to pay me what she owes me now in this case, to do something about that. But anyway, I knew the commissioner when she was a court clerk, and then she went to law school and became a judge, and then was appointed commissioner. She's highly regarded throughout the local judiciary. When she says something like she said in that memo, you take notice.
Yeah, and she said to his attorney, Michael McEwen's attorney, I think it's in a transcript. She said, "I think your client did it." So then she said she was going to send it over to Judge Camarino, who would send it on to the DA's office. I don't know what happened from there, but I do know for a fact that it also went to the presiding judge, Michael T. Smith, and his media person actually told Julie Reeder, not me, but Julie Reeder, that he did send that on to the DA's office. So we now have these two judicial officers who sent this to the DA's office to be investigated. And what is bothersome to me is, as the victim, I don't know what's happened. Were they investigated? Because the DA sent a letter to Julie Reeder's office stating that they investigated and didn't find enough evidence, which you have to be concerned just as an American citizen that the judicial system is, you can't find enough evidence. That's setting a precedent for a lot of fraud to continue to happen in the courts. And I'll let Gary.
Well, I don't know what happened in the investigation. It concerned me greatly that so much of it was redacted. I don't know why it was redacted. Okay, because this was an investigation into potential fraud on the court. I would like to see an unredacted copy of that. You know, that may be the subject of a different legal proceeding in the future. But as of right now, it is redacted. And again, as I mentioned earlier, if they did a thorough investigation, why didn't they interview either of the attorneys that are cited as being involved in that fraudulent judgment? You would think that they would ask them to get their point of view, but they didn't. So I don't know what that means. It's concerning to me.
Mm-hmm. Just a lot of unanswered questions in a very important, delicate case.
Well, it's not just a case. And understand this. I mean no disrespect to Ms. Barrere. There's much more going on here than just Ms. McEwen, than her case. There's the whole issue of why, if there was a fraudulent judgment filed, which apparently there was, at least according to the two attorneys that were allegedly involved, one who wasn't at the hearing that allegedly was entered, one who never counseled Ms. McEwen, as was alleged in the attachments to the judgment. If that never happened and a fraudulent judgment was submitted and either inadvertently signed by the judge or his stamp was used, because there's another whole part of this story about a person claiming that they have a whole number of judicial court stamps in their possession. Okay, who doesn't work? This person doesn't work for the court, but that's what she's been alleged to have told people. Then that's something that needs to be investigated. I mean, these court stamps are, I don't know if the word is valuable, but to wrongdoers they're valuable because, you know, it's a facsimile of a judge's signature. Mm-hmm. Why that wasn't looked into, I don't know. Okay, why this fraudulent wage assignment order wasn't looked into more closely, I don't know. The alleged judicial officer that signed that, where the judge's signature goes, is not a judge. Mm-hmm. She was a clerk in small claims court. And Commissioner Radican, in her memo, if I remember correctly, lays out some suspicions of how all this came to be as far as photoshopping and things like that. Mm-hmm. These are serious offenses. You know, we can't just let people go around falsifying court documents. The district attorney's office doesn't want to look into it or wants to hide whatever their findings were. That speaks a lot to the character of the district attorney's office in San Diego County.
It sure does. Why can't people just do their jobs?
I don't know. But, you know, we've spoken about some issues which may have impacted what happened. I don't know why it was done the way it does. All I know is that it stinks.
Mm-hmm.
And the court had a court clerk. She's over all the clerks in the courthouse. She identified a fake wage assignment that was going to
the fake wage assignment.
The fake wage assignment that was going to Mr. McEwen's private mailbox. And she called his work and said, there is no court order for this. Stop it from going to his mailbox, because the court had that address as Mr. McEwen's address. They had a different address for me. So it was this court clerk who identified it and stopped it. And yet, and I'm going to say it, I am the victim. And as the victim, this court clerk isn't even allowed to testify that she's the one who identified the fake wage assignment. She's the one that called his work and stopped it. So the way I see it as the victim is we have the courts themselves calling and saying this document is fake. And yet, me being, you know, I don't like to call myself a victim, but I have spent probably maybe now somewhere up to $50,000 in attorney fees through 5 years of fighting this, because this isn't just something that just came up last month. This has gone on for 5 years. So for 5 years, Mr. McEwen has had a windfall of not just, you know, all of my money, but he's been able to retire on a full pension. And now he's having the time of his life, which yay for him, but my autistic son and I are struggling because Mr. McEwen, being that he gave himself a windfall of money, put me at the bottom of the pole. And then I had to struggle, and attorneys don't want to do these things for free. So every time I turned around, the attorneys in San Diego are charging between $500 and $600 an hour. And I'm told I'm getting a good price. But as a victim who has no money, and I'm responsible for taking care of my autistic son, he will forever be 12 years old. There is no one coming to rescue him but me. So in this 5 years, I've had to not only fight a system that appears to me to be something seriously wrong. I've had to fight a man, my ex-husband, who's obviously has influence in the courts and in the legal, or the, what is it, as a police officer, San Diego police officer, law enforcement. So given that, I have been discounted as less than human, and everybody forgets that there's two human beings here who have literally been destroyed because of a broken system that refuses to acknowledge wrongdoing. And because of that, and everybody has to be careful, nobody's going to get sued and all of this. But at the end of the day, Mr. McEwen walked away with a windfall of money. My autistic son and I have had nothing. I've had to put him in special housing to take care of him while I'm here in California trying to deal with this. And the rest of everybody doesn't have to hear my son call me every day, Ma, when can I come home? I miss you. I miss our home. And I have to tell him I don't have anywhere for you to go, son, because he doesn't understand that all my money was taken. So I just want it clear, there is a victim here, and that's not me, it's my son. And so even though the DA doesn't want to do their job, or the courts don't want to allow their people to testify to make a matter right that's been wronged, there is a victim. And I say, shame on you, San Diego. You have a victim here. You should care about the vulnerable people that are being hurt in the city of San Diego. And that would be my son and myself, but more my son, because he's the one who doesn't understand why this is going on and why this happened to his mom. So I don't know what else to say, because I think when everybody talks about all the stuff that's happened and everybody's shocked and surprised, at the end of the day, there's victims here who have been slaughtered. I mean, if you think that's not true, let me come to your house, steal all your money, and tell you, oh, you'll be okay. Now go hire an attorney and sue someone. With what money? What am I going to sue? I have no money. Everything was taken. So in my eyes, it was the perfect crime. And when you look at Mr. McEwen's CV and see all his expertise, which is quite impressive, he's a fraud forensic specialist. He was trained by the FBI. He's worked with Secret Service. I mean, his CV is very impressive. And I have to, being that I'm the victim, and I am very aware of what happened in this case, because I know I don't have to sit here and act like I don't know, because I do know what happened. I know exactly what he did, and I know exactly what happened in this case. And I've watched for 5 years now of people telling me, well, you got to give me a check for at least $20,000 just to go through this stuff.
I wish I'd asked for that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gary, for not, but I still have to give money to these attorneys, because I can't expect my attorney to do it for free. You know, I'd love to do my FundMe page, but at the end of the day, people don't see the victim who's crying and hurting, which is my son. And this should not happen to anybody ever, because you're not, I mean, this is something that is very broken in the court system. And I had a court reporter friend of mine tell me once, she said, you know, and if it's okay if I get a little religious here, but there was a time when Jesus was at the temple, and he was, you know, telling everybody that was dishonoring it, that you did wrong and get out of here. Well, that's what's happened to the judicial system. They have been brought down.
Mhm.
And even though none of them want to take accountability, they've been treated very badly by a fraudster. And I won't say who the fraudster is, but the fraudster did something to the court system. And so now I'm not the only victim, but the court system has been, I don't know, looks to me like they've been a little besmirched themselves. And I would think that somebody would want to come in and say, you know what, this is not okay. This is not okay to do fraud on the court. And we are not going to put up with it, and hold somebody up accountable to say, if this is what's going to happen, if anyone else ever tries to put fraud on us, it's not acceptable. But instead, what the courts and what the DA has done is said, we don't see this as that big a deal. We're all going to hide and run and let this money changer destroy further a judicial system that already a lot of people are aware are very broken. Is very broken.
Well, I think that in some ways, in certain circumstances, the justice system does wind up being broken. There's so much politics going on in the judiciary. There's so much politics going on in the bar associations. They go after people that are politically incorrect. The judiciary goes after people that are politically incorrect because they want one view and only that view come forward. The canon of ethics say that we're supposed to, as judges, we're supposed to look at each case on the facts and law applying to the case. Yet if you go into the judicial system, you'll see that if you don't, and I can give you names of judges who will confirm this, if you don't do what the district attorney's office wants on a regular basis, if you don't do what the city attorney's office wants on a regular basis, they will go after you because they want to be obeyed. And there used to be a time in San Diego where if the city attorney or the district attorney did something that was not considered kosher, their cases would be sent out from downtown to El Cajon or North County or whatever to in fact punish them for certain judges around. Nowadays, the judiciary seems so afraid of the DA's office, afraid of the city attorney's office, that they won't do anything. They won't protect the judges. It's like these entities can get away with what they want, no matter how wrong it is. And I've been told this by senior judges who were around a long time before I was there, and a long time, and they're still there. Okay, but there's very few judges that are willing to stand up to the status quo in the local judiciary and in the local legal system, and that's a shame.
Mm-hmm. Very broken. I have heard, I had a guest on, he told me that the court clerks are more powerful than the judge. And I had to agree with him.
Well, to a certain extent, look, I was blessed by God, and I'm a Christian. I'm not going to, and I was blessed. I had Christian people working around me and with me. Mm-hmm. And very good friends with my bailiff, who was my bailiff for all 6 years I was on the bench. He was originally from the Philippines, served honorably in the United States Navy, became the highest rank you can without being an officer. Then he came to work for the court system. And we had, one of the things we did, can't get me now, and unfortunately he's died, we had to have a hidden prayer session at the courthouse. We'd have to do it in hiding because the court system can't have any Christians around here, can't allow that to happen. So there was a group of mostly bailiffs, and I was the only judge. There was one or two clerks that appeared occasionally. There was another judge that was going to get involved, but I believe was scared off. There's a lot of good people in the court, not just those people. There's a lot of good people, of course, a lot of good clerks who want to do the best, to do what's right. I just wanted to do what's right. And I was gone after because of that on the bench. Sure, there are some clerks that are bad. There are bailiffs that are bad. There's judges that are bad. I mean, I could tell you stories you wouldn't want to hear about. And I don't want to say on the air. But you have to understand they're all human and they make mistakes. But the problem is that often the judiciary seems to want to cover up their mistakes rather than deal with them, rather than saying this is wrong.
Mm-hmm.
You know, this has got to be stopped. They don't want that. Whether it's because they're afraid of repercussions. For instance, we talked about, some forensics clerk that lied about their background or their credentials, whatever, in all these cases, whether that's the reason or because of embarrassment. Okay. I don't know. I can't. I know some of the judges that are not good people. Okay, they shouldn't be on the bench,
Mm-hmm.
but they've gained a lot of power, so everyone's afraid of them. I wasn't afraid of them. That's why I got in trouble on the bench. I challenged them.
Mm-hmm.
I was told by one of the senior judges after my first month on the bench that I had a target on my back because I spoke up and objected to what I thought was some unconstitutional actions and improper actions by the presiding judge when I first took the bench. And she said, "You got a target on the back, one judge can say something, you say the same thing, they're fine, you're going to get punished." It's just because of the politics on the bench. It's terrible.
Mm-hmm.
Really.
That politics trickles down to we the people,
Mm-hmm.
because we are the ones who continue to be victimized because of their unscrupulous politics, whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
But because they're broken, we're the ones who are the ones that are the casualty of war. We have people who lose their children, and you question what is going on. I've seen this happen just recently, but there's in my 5 years, unfortunately now, I've watched a lot of unjust things happen in the courtrooms that would just put your hair on end of what I've seen. And not because I've wanted to, but because I was dragged into this system. And now I have to sit into courtrooms and I have to listen before my case comes up. I'm having to listen to all these cases. And I have to tell you, it's a very sad situation. And I see victims after victims going through the courthouses. And that's just in our San Diego. So I can only imagine what this whole country is like. But I would say to anybody, if you could avoid going into the court system, avoid it, because it is a frightening place. And I have seen some horrible things with my own eyes. And I have heard stories from people that you think this can't be true. And when you hear my story, you think, well, there's got to be more to it. But the fact is, there isn't more to it. This was fraud on the court, fraud on me, and somebody did it. And it's that simple.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to ask, well, who walked away with all the money? Well, only one person did, who is now claiming I did it because I want to keep him in litigation. And I think, who is thinking that's going to be the real thing? Like, really? That's the best you got? Mm-hmm. But he's been able to get away with a lot so far. So.
Well, the wheels of justice are slow, but they do turn.
Do they, Gary?
Well, we'll see. We have hearings coming up. There's been really a lot of bizarre things that have gone on in this case. According to Commissioner Radican, and I'll quote her because she looked into it, files have disappeared from the court filing system. That's a felony to remove items from the court files. But it's happened in this case, apparently several times. Mm-hmm. No one, DA's office doesn't care. No one wants to. Now, there was an order. It's funny. There was an order put out by the Commissioner Radican that none of the parties were allowed access to the court files without somebody monitoring them. That didn't happen. Okay, she put in an order of freezing Mr. McEwen's pension, and because Ms. McEwen has a community property interest in part of that pension. Mm-hmm. That happened. Mr. McEwen has provided me documents during our discovery phase, shows he's getting a check from his pension every month. But despite the fact that there was a court order barring that from happening. And when I asked somebody, he said, well, the police department's attorneys got around that. No, you'd have to go back to court and get that order lifted. Mm-hmm. So these are things that are going to come out at the court hearing. And we'll see what God has in store for Mrs. McEwen in this case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Well,
and then love to come back and tell
Most
you
definitely. I
about
was just
Delta.
going to say, I would love to have you both back on when you're ready after all of this.
Our court date is March 20th and 21st in San Diego at Judge Calicarian's courtroom, which is courtroom 801 on Broadway in San Diego. So it should be, I don't know, an interesting, I guess, 2 days. For me, it will be forever life-changing, but it will definitely save our system. So I'm not hopeful, but I'm not unhopeful. Let's put it that way.
Well, God's will be done.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Whenever I went into court, one of my friends said, just go in there without any expectations.
Right. And that's the only way to get through all of this is have no expectations. And that's hard to do when you have no money.
I had a case just this week where I was facing an interesting attorney and his client. I was representing the mother of a child, and the other side was representing, the other attorney was representing the father of the child. There's no marriage. It was an out of wedlock child. And every time I started to make a point, the other attorney would talk over me and he called me a liar, just kept talking and talking. So I shut up and wait till my turn. I start talking again, and he started all over again. Finally, I said, Mr. So-and-so, will you stop interrupting me? He says, I haven't interrupted you one time. And I looked at him and said, you've interrupted me numerous times. And I said, Your Honor, am I going to be allowed to speak? And so she finally shut him up and allowed me to make my points. He still kept trying to interrupt me every time I was making a point he didn't like. Finally, at the end of the hearing, the judge ruled our way. After the, well, anyway, I won't go into the details of what was said, but the judge ruled our way. So what happens? The attorney for the father says, well, Your Honor, I want an evidentiary hearing because I think your ruling is wrong, and I want to set a hearing in 20 days so we could stop this temporary order you give. And the judge looks at him and says, this wasn't a temporary order, Mr. So-and-so. This was a ruling. I'm not going to set an evidentiary hearing so you keep litigating, so this keeps going on litigation. This is a final ruling. I can't stop you from bringing some motion in the future, but this is a final ruling. So she's giving him a real strong hint to back off. So, sometimes you just get, and and the clients and her mother and I were, when we were, in waiting our turn, and because the other attorney had multiple other hearings, so we had to wait the whole morning until our case finally came up, wasting a lot of my clients' money, just sitting there. And that happens. I mean, I've been in those situations before where an attorney has multiple other hearings. It just, it's frustrating, especially for the clients. You're like, what am I paying you to sit here for? And it's like, I have no control over it. But in the end, we have to trust in God. That's what I firmly believe.
And the judicial system, we have to hope, isn't 100% corrupt, because I want to believe there are good judges who do make sound judgments. I believe that a lot of judges can only make a call based on what evidence is put in front of them. And I'm hoping that in this case, there will be enough evidence so that a judge can make a clear and concise and direct, what did you call it?
Judgment.
Ruling. Court ruling.
Now, let me just not contradict, say one thing. There's a lot of good judges in the system. I know a lot of good judges. They're honest people. They try to do their best. Sometimes they are limited by the rules that go on in our judicial system. Sometimes they let themselves be limited by some rules that could be gotten around, not in an improper way, but you can. What did Bill Clinton say? It depends on what the definition of is. Some people do things. They want to argue how many angels are on the head of a pin. Well, sometimes you just got to look at the facts and say, here's the facts. The law says this, but this is what's right. Sometimes judges have to do what's right, not just follow the law. Unfortunately, I know there's a number of judges who don't follow the law, but not to do right, but to follow their own personal agenda. And that's the sad part of it. So.
I think what you had said about arguing with this attorney and he would just interrupt you and just keep going. I think this happens in a lot of courtrooms, and they just get away with it. As soon as they throw out a false narrative, then they just run with it.
So, okay.
Yes. So I would like to have you both back on. So you'll have to keep me posted, Carrie. And how can you be reached if anyone has any questions for either of you?
Well, I did start a foundation, and sometimes when you have bad things happen to you, good things can come from it. I have my life like that. So I did start a foundation. It's called Karilee's Closet. It's Karielee 123 Closet, and it's at G George Mary X Xylophone. So it's gmx.com, and we are setting up a website to do paralegal work for people who can't afford attorneys.
Mhm.
Also have court reporters that have joined us to do court reporting for families who can't afford court reporters in San Diego. We're also being able to have referral lists of attorneys that we vet that we can refer our clients to. So we're working on a really wonderful website. I have a wonderful team of people who have also come and joined me. And we're grateful to attorneys like retired Judge Gary Kreep, because these attorneys are hard to find.
Oh.
And they still have to be paid, and they still, make a living too. So that's why we started this foundation, in hopes to find good attorneys, but that can also get paid. So they can reach us at that foundation. If they have any questions, want to go on our website, want to learn more about it, or even want to contribute. It is a 501(c)(3) nonprofit organization.
And as far as getting a hold of me, my email address is Gary, Gary, at, and then the next three letters are my initials, G as in George, G as in George, K as in kangaroo, mail, mail.us, not USA.us. Gary at ggkmail.us. If somebody has a question, now understand, I do give mini consultations. Somebody calls me, has a real quick question, I'll talk to them or they email me. But understand, I've got to make a living too. So I can't take hundreds of emails or phone calls asking me questions. And I only practice in California, so I have no ability to give any advice on anything outside the state of California.
Gotcha. Well, I totally appreciate your time. And, I'd like to have you back on. So, Carrie, just let me know when you're ready to come back on. But don't jump off. Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in these family courtrooms. I am your host, Marianne Petrie, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Karilee and her attorney, and we will talk soon. Okay, thank you.